We have got a panel coming up on commercialisation in the creative industries. Do stick around after the panel because you're going to hear about some really exciting funding opportunities that you can get involved in. But to present our panel, I'd like to welcome to the stage our chair, Laura Partridge, Associate Director at AHRC. Thank you.
Hello. It's great to be here on day 2. Thank you, Katie. Thank you, Alan. We're going to get straight into it. I think Beyond is probably one of the best places we could be to talk about commercialising in the creative industries. So I want to introduce to you the stage a really fantastic panel. So we'll crack straight in. Let's start with, we have Patrick Bradley, who is founder and managing partner of Station 12. Patrick, welcome to the stage. We also thank you. Next up, we've got Jonathan Lloyd, who is founder and CEO of a company based right here in Greater Manchester. Welcome, Jonathan. We also have my UKRI colleague, Emma Cooper, who works in Innovate UK's Business Connect team, specifically on creative industries. Emma. And last but definitely not least, please welcome Fiona Kelly. Fiona Kilkelly. I've only known her 4 years. Fiona is Head of Commercialisation at the CoSTAR National Lab. Okay, let's make sure everyone's comfy. Do have some water, panel, if you need it. So, we've heard so many brilliant things already in Beyond today, and we've had a really good introduction of today from speakers already this morning. There's a lot going on. It's a really interesting, exciting, vibrant time. It's also quite a complex landscape out there, I think, at the moment. And so I think we'll get straight in. Patrick, from your perspective, Station 12 have invested in businesses across, I think, TV, sport, content creation. You've seen a lot. You will have seen a lot from across that climate from the private perspective. What do you think are the sort of really big challenges, the biggest challenges facing commercialisation or obstacles to commercialising in the creative industries at the moment?
So you're right, I have been around the industries for probably too long, but I think my view at the moment is we face probably the most challenging time I have experienced during my career in entertainment, and there are a lot of reasons for that. I think the impact of technology, which as we know in the sector has always been a catalyst to change and often a catalyst to greater opportunity. But we're seeing AI in particular come into all sectors of entertainment. And certainly from the point of view of an investor, the question we're asking, for example, in television content production is, what is the new model? Everything is changing. Tell us what the new model is. How are we going to take that opportunity and see commercialisation? And so far, I'm not sure anyone actually has that answer. I think also one of the issues that I would raise is the structure of the sector, which is it's dominated by very large, primarily American, there are some European conglomerates, but there aren't any British ones. And one of the things I've seen throughout my career is we are so good at creativity. And at this conference, I know we're talking about creativity, there is not a shadow of doubt that this country is one of the leading, if not the leading source of creativity in the world. We're great. My issue with it is we don't own our creativity. We don't own the profits of that. And we're talking about commercialisation today. And I think, from my point of view, I find it frustrating that I went to see Paddington 3 the other day, which obviously brought me to tears, but we don't own the rights to that. Harry Potter, we don't own. Winnie the Pooh, we don't own. I mean, I know these are old IPs, but across the sector, we don't actually own the great IP that we generate. We tend to license that out, and then it's bought by the larger conglomerates. So I think, just following on from the statements of the Minister, it is absolutely fantastic what's being done in terms of clusters and the support being put into the creative economy. There is no doubt that that is of great value. But I think what we need to see is we need to see some structural changes so that we can create a scalable, sustainable entertainment industry in the UK, which is not there, if you like, for the world to come and harvest. It's for us to have the benefit and profits and income of our IP. So I remain positive. I'm an investor in the sector, but I think there are real challenges. Technology is one, and these structural issues that, you know, I would ask government in particular to start thinking about what can they do to address those sort of issues.
Thanks, Patrick. A couple of embedded calls to action there, I think. Jonathan, CGHero is your, I think, the third company that you've founded. You've got experience of founding businesses, I think, in the UK and the US. You've been through the various cycles of different sources of private and public support over those years, I think from bootstrapping right the way through to a couple of exits. So when you hear some of Patrick's sort of synopses there, how much of that rings true with your own experience? Tell us a little bit about your perspective from the business.
It does ring true. We were talking about this before, but so in my first business, I exited to the US. There wasn't the support structure at the time. We're talking quite a number of years ago now, probably about 15 years ago or something like that. So now I am here. So this is the thing. I exited and moved to the US, and I came back to the UK to found another company. Why? Because we're the best for springboarding creative talent. The challenge is the longevity of that. So as a private business, of course, if someone's, and we're venture backed as well. So if someone comes to your company and says, I want to buy this from you, which is typically going to be US or some European potentials at the moment, then it's hard to say no if the right money is there. I would always come back to the UK to start, and it's got phenomenally better than it was before. So I was in Manchester with that first business as well. We were a tiny ecosystem back then, just coffee meetings with a few founders and a few private investors. That's all it was really. So that's grown massively over time, and there's more support now for going the mile, going that extra mile. We've received funding as well from the government, which has been fantastic. I haven't seen this before, actually, where we're pairing up private equity and government money to put into companies to see us through and actually, ideally, hold on and say, well, why don't we keep that here? Do we have to sell that off to other countries and sell off that sort of creativity, if you like? But we're still the springboard, and we're amazing at it. So Manchester in particular, because I'm here, obviously biased, but Manchester's a fantastic creative hub, and I chose, I'm not from Manchester, I'm from Wales originally, but yes. But I chose to come back to Manchester for that reason, just because we are an amazing place, and I didn't stay in the US for that. So we'll see. Technology challenges, yes, there's AI and other things, but actually being in the industry close to 20 years now, I've seen the changes of technology, and the creative industry adapts to technology so well, and we don't always see that from the outside. But AI and everything else, I'll just say we shouldn't be worried about this. The amount of content that's now in demand, the amount of creativity that's in demand worldwide is just constantly growing, and the complexity and challenges of building those. If you think about film or TV, games, we're unforgiving as a audience to what needs to be done in those spaces and the level of complexity and scale that we're looking at. So AI and other things and the technology is going to bring our ability to do that more and ship that out to the world, sure, but we are consumers ourselves as well. But we should look globally. I think that would be my action here as well, is the UK being quite insular. We do need to look at selling that creativity more apparently out into the world, which we have done, but not selling off the core IP, to Patrick's point. So we can retain that, but we can still put that out to the world, which we're great at doing, great at distributing creativity from the UK.
Okay, great. You mentioned that, well, you kind of glossed over that 15 years. Well, yeah. I don't know. Is it more, is it less? Who knows?
Yeah.
I think, I wonder, can you say a little bit about if you think things have evolved much in the UK in that 15 years? Have they got better? What have you seen that's changed? And how do you feel about the next 5, 10, 15 years in terms of those big themes that we've already touched on?
I'm massively positive on it actually at the moment. It's been incredible. What's changed over that time? I left Manchester when MediaCity wasn't here. I actually lived in Salford Keys as well, and Vancouver Quay around the corner. I left and this wasn't here. You know, the Lowry was, of course, but not MediaCity. I came back to this amazing hub that had been built. So that transformation over those years I was away coming back is amazing. And we've got as we're saying, the content clusters around the UK. We are still very regionally specific though. I found that, you know, I'm more open. Again, not from Manchester, but I live here, but I want us to be more open to working across different areas and sectors and bringing that together across the UK. Obviously, coming outside of London as well and bringing more money into different regions is very important. But still, I find it a struggle that we don't connect in. So Manchester to Sheffield to Leeds to Liverpool, we rarely interact, which is very strange. But we're breaking down that now in the games industry in particular. Amazing, UK Games Republic and others bringing us together across different regions. So we were in Wakefield the other day. I hadn't been up to Wakefield before, but fantastic and amazing that we come together and share that.
Absolutely. So you mentioned the geographies, but it's also about the technologies, right?
Yeah.
The convergence of those technologies and what those different subsectors can collaborate on, learn from, etc. I think also interested, another binary that you mentioned is the UK versus US climate. I mean, interesting times at the moment. So coming away from the regions and looking globally, I'm really interested in your kind of comparative experience between those two countries as well.
Yeah.
And where is there anything else you want to add on that in terms of what, dare I ask, was it better in the UK or better in the US?
I'm sort of 50-50 on it. There's things in the US that are absolutely amazing. The culture, the work culture that's there, you know, is phenomenal. You know, and as a founder, that's I'm a bit boring really. That's my life, is, you know, in business, and I love what I do on that side. So it's good to share that with other passionate people on that side. But what I will say is the US has similar challenges to us. They don't have enough talent to propel that, and so they're looking further afield. We're great in the UK at managing creativity for the US as well, and being a hub for that. But Europe as well is emerging too. So the US, I'm sort of 50-50 on it, because there's things we do far better here and there's things they do far better over there. There's always things to learn from both sides. But we do things quite uniquely. The thing I'd say, it's becoming quite devolved. So the creative industry, now we've gone remote, through COVID has helped us really expand horizons and look beyond the central hubs. So in the US it's LA, as you can imagine, it's New York, Chicago and various other places. But now creativity is everywhere, and it can spawn from anywhere you'd like. Through technology and other things now, we can just interact and build together collaboratively. So that's been a big change, actually. And so the US is very much open to working with the UK, of course. Who knows through the new changes that's happening there at the moment. But we'll see.
Thank you, and absolutely not boring. Thank you very much. Jonathan mentioned something that I see quite a lot. We talk about creativity and we talk about technology. And not everyone is comfortable with putting them in the same sentence. I mean, most of this room hopefully is. But I think there's something else we can think about when we look at that bigger sort of national economy building around where our strengths are. Emma, you and I have got a few shared goals in common. We both work within UKRI to support the creative industries and hopefully doing our bit to build a healthy and booming landscape in which it can thrive. And of course, you've got your own experience from industry as well. So I just wondered, from your perspective, how does that sit, that divide between creative and tech? Is there, there shouldn't be one, but how do we think about that? Because I think we come across sometimes some challenges at making sure that, you know, creative and tech are in the same room. And they're, as Jonathan says, learning from each other.
Yeah, I think I was thinking about this a lot yesterday, and I think Jude Kelly answered this question on stage yesterday. I think we do fall into a kind of false dichotomy between creativity and tech, and I think that comes slightly from tech's ability to raise funds seemingly more easily. I think, as Jonathan will probably attest, it's not that much easier running a tech organisation versus a pure arts organisation. What I know from my experience of working in the industry is that creating something with code is as creative as making something with clay. And I think that we don't do well by creating a binary. We're much stronger and better if we work together. However, Jude mentioned yesterday that actually we need to meet people where they are, and that different subsectors need different responses, and we need to be more creative in our response and how we deal with each subsector and what offer we can do to support them to find thriving and sustainable businesses.
Absolutely. And I think, given what you've heard from Patrick and Jonathan, looking forward, what do we do with all of this? What do you think kind of better or improved looks like in terms of our responsibility in the widest sense of our, you know, at a national level? Mm-hmm. We've heard from the Minister, we're here representing UKRI, Innovate and AHRC. I think we've all got, in the very widest sense, responsibilities to see how all of the composite parts join together. So what do you think even better or optimum looks like, building on some of Jonathan's ideas?
I think optimum looks like building on the work that's already been done. So Jonathan was successful through the Create Growth programme. He was able to achieve an investor partnership, which means he applied to Innovate for some grant funding, and in collaboration with that was able to land some investor investment. And I think building on that work is really important oftentimes. And actually, the other thing I've been thinking about is, a few years ago I was sitting in the audience as a punter, as a member of a immersive technology business, very interested in the levers that government are able to push and pull in terms of moving the market, and in terms of, through that funding and support, being able to support businesses that are in really nascent fields. And I think we've got this incredible opportunity, but sometimes we see a drop-off of funding. Sometimes we see programmes disappear and fade away. So I think what I would really like to see is continuous, consistent funding programmes, and a lot more joined-up thinking between all of the various agencies and support mechanisms. Because from an outside perspective, it's very challenging to navigate and to understand what all of the acronyms mean and where exactly you fit. It may be that your cash flow means that that competition doesn't actually meet your needs right now, but in 6 months it would be ideal. So how do we get to a point where the funding is not necessarily a tap, but has the ability to meet people where they are?
Okay, so I don't think we're going to address all of those challenges in 31
That's
minutes.
like gold star future. Gold star
I
future.
did ask for optimum, so fair enough. But I think what I'm hearing there is this isn't just about landscape and ecosystem building, it's about time as well,
Yeah.
and the chronologies within all of that, and how we maybe have a longer view and have an eye on longer term a little bit. Which segues nicely into this little gig that Fiona and I are trying to work on with a lot of people in the room as well, the CoSTAR network. I hope that will begin to address some of these challenges. It's only one programme, but it's certainly an exciting one. And Fiona, obviously your experience in this field, working with both public and private sector and supporting industries in the creative field for a long time, you can draw on all of this. I wonder, first of all, what do you think the creative sector could learn from other sectors in terms of what works well and what works better, particularly with some of this short-termism versus longer view in mind?
Well, we'll pick up on some ways in which we might be able to start addressing that on CoSTAR in a little bit. But I think we were talking about this earlier, weren't we? And we talked about it as a panel, about how we help creative companies articulate their value. I was been really lucky to work with lots of creative companies, and more quite recently in particular with creative businesses looking to drive value in the health sector. And anybody in the room who's an XR or immersive company looking to work in the health sector will know what a very different market that is to navigate, apart from how the funding works, the regulations and standards and so on. You know, it's very, very difficult. And also what the NHS and others expect a creative company to articulate is not just their business plan, but what their value is. So they want you to set out what's called a 5-case business plan. And part of that 5-case business plan is where creative companies need to articulate their value to society as a whole. So it's about how you measure the impact, the outcome and value of what your solution is going to be by measuring its effect on particular groups, participants and users across the UK, and coming up with a net value to society. So working with companies around this 5-case business plan, it became really apparent that actually this is what we need to do in the creative industries for companies, is to say, what is this new business plan? What's this evolving market and ecosystem demanding of companies that we currently don't have the knowledge and tool set to respond to? So what can we learn from elsewhere to help companies become much more robust, resilient, and articulate value in other ways other than economic? And one of that, Patrick, absolutely to your point about IP, the capital of IP, the asset base of IP for creative companies is so important. And when we have a short-term funding ecosystem, which we very much do, we're very grateful for the grants that drive innovation and R&D in this country, but it leads to a mindset where you're delivering to a 12-month or 24-month window, and you're not building capacity in your company for longevity. So that funding goes, and you lose everything. You lose your attractiveness to a potential investor. You might lose key staff and key skill sets in your business, and you're back down to ground zero again. So what I think we're really keen on looking at in CoSTAR is longevity. Yeah. It's creating a place for companies to come, and it's an infrastructure fund, right? It's infrastructure. The clue is in the name. It's not just the bricks and mortars, but mind you, they're very nice bricks and mortars. We've got fantastic labs across the UK. It's the buildings, it's the facilities, it's the technology that's in each one of those labs, really leading edge, fantastic new facilities. Secondly, it's the people in those labs that can make that technology work, and it's a place where companies can come and use that space to develop new ideas, innovate in a much more de-risked environment, lowering the barrier to entry, getting companies into this environment where they can think of the long term and not short term. And that's really fertile ground, I think. Oh, and actually the other element is the infrastructure, the technology, the creative and tech expertise to work with that technology. But the beauty of CoSTAR is, for one of the first, I think, probably in my lifetime of working in the UK, a really, really straightforward bridge to bringing research closer, academic research closer to applied innovation. So we've got a really rich collection of researchers, many of them are in the room here actually, who will be over the next 5 years developing early to late stage or new research, which is actually kind of the lifeblood of what companies need. In Innovate UK, when I used to work there, if I had a penny for every company that walked in the door and said, great, the grant will be brilliant, but actually what I need is some research to add some heavy evidence and data to my value proposition, because that's going to make me much more attractive to a future investor. Yeah. So anyway, I gabbed on a lot there, but I think it's a really interesting new place, I think, where we're afforded a very valuable opportunity to think differently about how we do this.
And it begins to afford that longer view. hopefully.
Which is critical, yeah.
So I want to come back to Patrick, actually, because you mentioned the potential investor. This word longevity, what do you think, Patrick? Go back to some of your kind of opening comments around the biggest challenges. You know, we talked before about, you know, in your opinion, we're in many ways in one of the most challenging episodes ever. How much is longevity the answer? How do you respond to some of Emma and Fiona's ideas just then?
I think longevity is a key issue to address, because I think that's where investors get it wrong. Because we have a very short-term outlook in the UK.
Mm-hmm.
And just taking up some of the points made by Emma and Fiona, the clusters programme, for example, we absolutely have to make sure that there is continuous sustained investment over a long period of time to actually see the results. And I think for investors, they have to understand that a 3-year programme, for example, in terms of a company, is meaningless. I mean, in terms of how we talk about our own investment approach, there are a number of things we say. We are a mid to long-term patient investor, and you have to be in the sector. In fact, in most sectors, you have to be long-term and patient. In terms of technology, just to Emma's point, technology and creativity absolutely 100% go together. But what we say to our investor base is we're not technology investors. We are, if you like, creative investors. We're interested in what that technology creates and carries. But as importantly, just to Fiona's point, we also talk about we want to be in opportunities that people understand, are simple to understand. I don't invest in tech funds because, to be perfectly honest, I don't understand it. You know, you go in front of a tech, I just don't know what they're talking about half the time because it is so complicated. But our offer is we invest in companies, technology is going to be present in some form, but these are simple things to understand because you can touch and feel it, because you're going to engage with it. And to the point about impact, that these companies are, as part of their output, creating more happiness for people involved in them. And if you create that happiness, then that is actually also indirectly going to add to their commercialisation, whether it's live events, games, content. So I think these are all key points that I think from the investor point of view, I would like the investment community probably to understand better than they actually do.
You're good at calls to action this morning, Patrick. Thank you. How does that work with your pitch book, Jonathan?
It's interesting, right? We fund companies. I was just going to put this out there. The innovation is the important key underneath some of these things. For myself in creative tech, you know, and technologies that empower and move for speed, actually, because in the creative industry, we do, as I mentioned, demand content quickly. And we actually can't get the content out quick enough to audiences. You know, this is within IP and certain structures as well. So if film comes out, you want to look at a game or a particular mobile app or something alongside that as well. How do you do that quickly? So empowering that through technology has been a way that we can get some of that out quickly. But the underlying innovation that we have in those companies lives on beyond the company. So this is the challenge we've got with the investment community as well, is obviously trying to capitalise on those companies, and there will be an exit event. That's what we're aiming for typically in companies, and to give their investors their return at some stage. And being patient is fine, but there's still an exit event. There's still, who are we selling this to at some point in time? So is that selling back into the UK ecosystem? That would be lovely. You know, that would be great that we've got the structure, the infrastructure to buy back and to build and to continue to keep it here in the UK, which is going to be very challenging. I'm not sure how we address that really, because we do have a short-term outlook anyway on investment, a short-term outlook on innovation, which takes time as well. It's really, really strange, you know, that we want to innovate quickly. And that's one thing I would say with you know, the DCMS grant, absolutely fantastic. I've never seen this, as I mentioned before, where you're pairing private equity into the Create Growth programme, which is bringing those two worlds together. The challenge we've got is that that is very short term in itself. The project will last 6 months. What do we do post 6 months when we've built those teams up around that particular proposition and behind that innovation? So that's a challenge for me as a company, because when the innovation doesn't stop, it doesn't conclude at the end point of that. So we need to continue follow on. And if you start with a smaller grant, and I say small, would have been massive years ago, but 200,000 or 100,000, that's giving you that clear start and motivation to go. But we need to support those people. So that's a seed. It's a pre-seed. That is a tiny, tiny little sort of blip of money. And then we've got to continue to follow on. And so if we can do that in partnership with private investment as well, that goes forwards to de-risk. And the brilliant thing about having that money is it's non-dilutative, which for investors is absolutely fantastic. So that you can still, the investors are getting their outcome as well without seeing, okay, we're now diluting to another investor somewhere else. So we've made massive strides. I think this is huge change. As I mentioned before, I'm very positive on it because I've not seen this before. So hopefully we can continue that trend, and the programs as well, bringing the R&D, that's very welcome, bringing R&D closer. Yes, I mean, you can imagine as a private company capitalising on research and development, it is locked, I've found, in universities. In Manchester, we have incredible R&D happening inside of those organisations, and there might be a spin-out for that, and there might be spin-out companies, which we've seen even today. But the commercialisation element I found is I'm more business on that side, so I'm looking for the opportunity for the value of the return.
But this brings us back to some of Fiona's early points about defining what that value is and evidencing it and demonstrating it. I think we're touching again on another binary as well, is academia versus industry, and is that division, and wants to come in on that.
I think we kind of we're all working at different rhythms. So business is much faster, much quicker. It's come on, chop chop, let's get on with things. Whereas industry and certainly academia and R&D, there's a slower pace, and that slower pace comes from deep thinking and really considering the position. Having moved from private to public, I found that change in rhythm really challenging. But I'm starting to appreciate it, and I think that we need to come to a middle point where we're able in public sector to meet industry where it is. I keep saying that. We need to meet industry where it is. And certainly from a research perspective, being able to get that knowledge out into the market so that we can utilise it more effectively. And I think at the moment, finding a path between all of those things. I was looking in my notes because I can't remember who said it, but at Develop Conference in Brighton earlier this year, the keynote was talking about how the games industry as a sector worries far too much about the short term and nowhere near enough about the long term. And I think we all need to have a really big thing about where we're heading and how we structure the work that we're doing on the way there.
So Fiona, you should come here, and we'll keep powder dry a little bit for the session in a minute, but we're working on that, right? I mean, you've got some great ideas and plans for how to take this forward with CoSTAR.
Well, I think everything here actually just really I think it speaks to the potential, and that the potential we have here is to really double down on what we know UK companies are really good at doing research and development and coming out with really global, groundbreaking solutions. We have an opportunity now to actually spend more time with companies through CoSTAR and our work on the Enterprise and Commercialisation Programme around their capital, which is their IP. So how do you build a resilient, sustainable, long-term business around your asset base? And to do both at the same time is quite a unique opportunity, because the facilities, the tech, the people, the research is there. Great, go do really good R&D. Our job is, right, what can we wrap around this at the same time as you're going through an innovation process? What's your business innovation process? And how do those two things dovetail together. So in short, that's the sweet spot, I think,
Yeah.
and where there's a lot of learning. We've got to learn what that looks like. I think it's pretty new. And what is exactly the intervention that's needed at the right point to when they need it. We have to learn that. And I think we're probably going to it's going to come, we want industry to come and test these facilities, test this process with us and help define something that is longer term, provides an anchor and a sustainable base for companies to grow.
Fantastic. I think that's probably a really good note to end on, but I am going to give the final word to our resident business on the panel. I'm going to throw this at you, Jonathan.
Yep.
What's on your Christmas list? What's in a nutshell, what is the one biggest thing that you think could really be transformative for commercialising the creative industries?
It's a very difficult question.
I know.
It's a big question. I think it's unification, probably, of our industries. I think we touched a little bit upon creativity in different sectors as well. We have a lot to give in the UK across, I think the innovation is going to happen at the intersection of the different industries coming together. So healthcare and creative, you know, think about some of those opportunities that are yet to be explored. And as a founder, you know, you literally want to get in founding things. You want to find that innovation, and that's the sort of the push, and continued funding around those intersections would be amazing. And probably a last point is, so to my point earlier as well, is us coming together from both sides. So I'm sort of wedged in between the private equity and the money coming from government. Things like I'm wedged in between. So it's communication. It's this. How do we make this work for the industry and for other companies, both fledgling and larger companies as well, to really expand our creative horizon within the UK, and it will go beyond anyway. So I think coming together as an industry and sectors around this would be amazing.
Thank you. What a note to leave on. I think we'll wrap up there. You're going to hear shortly, as we know, a little bit more from Fiona and her colleague Will, so we'll move on to that. But thank you very much. We are obviously going to be around for the rest of the day. We've got loads more to hear from in this morning's session. And we'll all be around in the break to carry on chats and dialogues with everybody in the room. But can I please thank our wonderfully stellar panel, and thank you very much for listening.
Thank you, Lloyd.